Hello and welcome to another episode of the Disco Elysium podcast, Human Can Opener, presented to you by the 41st Precinct. My name is David, and as always, I'm joined by an esteemed guest from the wider world of Elysium. That guest today is a video essayist who has produced 5 videos on YouTube. In that content has shown themselves to be well-read and very articulated essayist. Most importantly, of course, for this podcast, one of those videos was called No Truce With Capital and was in direct response to the huge Disco Elysium documentary by People Make Games. Welcome to the podcast, Stushi.
Hi, David. Happy to be here, and thanks for that really grandiose intro. I would not have said all those things about myself, but
Well, that shows
yeah.
that you are a humble video essayist, as you point out on your YouTube channel, actually. So it's in keeping with your character, Stushi. Thank.
That's true.
So we're recording this on the 12th of October, which is a very special day if you're a Disco Elysium fan. And we will get to some of that stuff later, sorry. But first, I do want to find out a little bit about you and go through some of the usual questions that we have at the start of the podcast and find out a little bit about you and your history with gaming and some of the things you love. So now, normally, when I have people on, they're very researchable. You are not. You are not very researchable. So I'm going to kind of add a sprinkle to my first question about your history with gaming. I obviously love to know how people got into gaming, etc., and what their first memories were. But if you could tell us a little bit about yourself as well, within that would be beautiful.
So I am glad to know that I'm not very researchable because that's good. I feel like the less people know about me outside of what I choose to put out there, the better. History of gaming wise, I don't know. I'm one of those people where I'm like, I'm a gamer, but but then I look back on my childhood and my entire life, and I have been playing games for literally my entire life. Started out in the era of the Sega, so started out with that, and then, lots of PC games, like just like every day after school, going on Miniclip and those kinds of sites, Newgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I I think you asked like what's your earliest memory with games, and I think that's sort of what it would be. But in terms of like what stuck with me a lot, it was actually Barbie Secret Agent. That was one of my favorite games as a kid, and I think back to that game a lot, and I think I would like to replay it now as an adult and see what's up with that, why it's stuck in my head so much. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
anyway.
I'm glad you said something as strange and obscure as Barbie Secret Agent, because when we're little kids, we obviously just play whatever is given to us and whatever our parents could afford, etc., etc. And
Yeah.
I always remember one called Roscoe McQueen on the PlayStation, and
Oh, interesting.
probably if I was to go back to it, to your point, it would be the most hideously designed, awful computer game ever made. But I loved it. It was like a firefighting thing. I just loved it as a kid.
I think it's also like growing up as a girl, it's like you're not really allowed, or at least in my time, you weren't really allowed to be openly into games as much. So finding a game that was like for girls specifically was like, oh my God, I can play this openly and like not feel ashamed and stuff. And
Yeah, that's a good point,
yeah, that
actually.
was part of it, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing how far we've come, or in some aspects maybe not, but mostly we've come pretty far in that arena. So it's good. It's good to see. Um, you can exclude Barbie Secret Agent from this next question if you like, but what is your favorite game of all time?
Yeah, well, if you make me exclude Barbie, I don't know what's next, but I have a really hard time with favorites. I'm one of those people who has the memory of a goldfish, so whatever I played last tends to really stick in my mind. But
Hmm.
I'm on this podcast for a reason, I guess. So I would definitely say that Disco Elysium is up top there, just in terms of like games that I tend to think about a lot, even though I played it last like more than 2 years ago or something. Um, and I tend to like, but other than that, I tend to like a lot of like platformers and twitchy type games. So
Mm.
stuff like Hades or Celeste or Hollow
Mm.
Knight. So games that are like have a bit of a difficulty when it comes to like I don't know, reaction time and stuff like that. I find those pretty fun.
Yeah, Hades is one of my favorite games of all time. Actually, it's up there
Yeah,
with
same.
Disco Elysium for me. I think what's really beautiful about it is uh, like if you peel back the layers, it's got some absolutely incredible storytelling and writing in that game. And you would be
Yeah.
forgiven for thinking it's like a bit button mashy, right? But there's a lot of skill involved, a lot of really good story. I love Greek mythology in general. Um, yeah, that's a great choice. Did you manage to play the second one yet?
No, I haven't. I want to wait until it's like all ready, all done. It's funny because I'm not really a fan of Greek mythology. It's not really something that I've ever been interested in, and that was part of what made me reluctant to play the game at first.
Hmm.
But then it was actually seeing screenshots on Twitter of people like shipping various characters together that made me interested in what it was about.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I played it because it made me interested in that stuff despite my lack of otherwise.
Yeah, it's very dark. There's a what was the podcast called? I used to listen to. I think it's so there was a guy. He did a load of podcast series just exploring the stories in Greek mythology,
Mm.
myths and legends. I think it was called. And before I'd got to that, my view of Greek mythology was kind of Disneyfied by the old Disney film Hercules, right, and various other kind of cartoony
Mm.
looks at it. And I had no idea it was some of the most brutal, savage storytelling in the history of mankind. So yeah, there you go. Lovely, positive vibes. Thinking about that. No, good choices. I mean, it's kind of a given. I expect Disco at least to be mentioned in that question, and you know, oh, I'm trying to contain my excitement about the future here at the same time. So keeping myself on track. Is there anything that you're playing at the moment that you're really enjoying?
I actually just finished playing A Thousand Times Resist. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a
Funny you mentioned that. The most recent guest, Volya,
oh
was saying the exact same answer and absolutely
oh
loved it.
wow,
Hmm.
that's cool. We should be friends. Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, maybe she explained what it's about, but it's one of those games that the less you know about it going in, the better your experience will be.
Hmm.
So, very, very narrative driven, basically only narrative driven. Like there's not a lot of gameplay in it.
Hmm.
But the storytelling is like one of the most amazing that I've seen. And it does a lot of jumps in time back and forth, and it manages to do all that without making it too confusing, which is such a rare thing for stories like that to do. And it just has like beautiful, beautiful writing. So if you're into Disco Elysium, you will definitely be into A Thousand Times Resist.
Yeah, that's two recommendations in a row. So now I'm obliged to go and play it.
You got it.
One of the things, just talking about narrative driven stuff, I'm not going to go into it too much because I haven't finished it, but I did mention to you on email that I was playing Night in the Woods at the moment.
Hmm.
According to the PlayStation, I'm 53% through. Um, I've just started to investigate spooky stuff, which will probably mean a lot to anyone who's played the game. The one thing I want to say about that game is, well, similar to what I tweeted about it actually, is like, why the fuck is this cute little kitty making me feel this way about things? I was
That's my
like,
favorite thing about it. It's like it's so cutesy and it catches you off guard and it just like it does that so well.
yeah, there's loads of like, it's a bit like BoJack Horseman in that respect, where there's that juxtaposition. I think that's the right word of the cutesiness with like a lot of the dark writing. But then I also really like something else that's found in both Night in the Woods and BoJack is it doesn't mind having silly animal humor. So the one I always remember from BoJack is Mr. Peanut Butter. Whenever he opens his, like, you can't remember where he turns up somewhere and he opens his boot, the trunk of his car, and it's just full of tennis balls. And I noticed that May's surname is Borowski, which I paid no attention to at all until I said it like a cat, and it's Borowski.
Okay, that was really good rendition of that. I had never thought of that.
I was like, oh yeah,
And now I'll just hear your voice every time I think of her name.
yeah,
So
yeah,
good job.
Brow. There you go. I've spent a lot of time obviously trying to make sure I got that meow right, so I'm glad it wasn't too bad.
Practicing every day in the mirror. It was worth it. It was caught me off guard with how well it was
Thank you,
accomplished.
thank you. um, so yeah, they're some great games to play, and I think they're both. Well, I don't know Thousand Times Resist, but it sounds very disco, and I would certainly say Night in the Woods is along the same kind of vibe as well. Now, I'm really interested in this next question for you, Stushi, because my view is that you are a very well cultured individual, and you seem to be into quite a few things that maybe I wouldn't. So this is going to be fascinating for me. So first of all, the question is whatever media do you enjoy, but we'll start with TV, and you can answer this in two ways, I guess. Is there a TV show that you worship and is like the greatest ever? And I know you don't like favourites, or one that you would highly recommend.
So I'm one of those people that will watch absolutely anything. And so I tend to waste my time a lot. But in terms of favorites, TV, it would probably have to be some kind of anime. That's my other obsession other than video games. Um, which one? I have no freaking clue. I mean, there's so much good stuff out there. Maybe just like because I'm being reminded because it's right behind my shelf here. There's Nana is one of my favorite manga of all time, and it also has a really good anime adaptation, which I think anyone could watch. It's like a very grounded human story. There's no like magical elements or anything to it. It's just like people hanging around each other and expressing their desires and being really raw with that in a way that I think is relatable to anyone. And the writing is just fucking amazing. But I guess what I am known for is my videos on Utena, which is also right over there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another show that's it seems to weirdly have a lot of overlap with Disco Elysium fans, the fandom at least. And I would not know why that is. I think maybe because like there's a lot of horrible men in both of them.
Mm.
And people love to just dissect that and be weirdly fans of that. But otherwise, I think it's because it like I don't know dives deep into the cruelty of humanity while also showing you the best parts of it.
Mm.
So maybe that's a bit of a stereotypical answer, but
No,
that's what I'll say for now.
I am not the most cultivated anime watcher, and I know that I'm missing out on so much. And for me personally, it's good to hear that kind of recommendation because it sounds like something. I think this is the problem I have is that there's a lot of anime, and I don't know. I don't even know where to start. Right, so
Yeah.
hearing recommendations like this is really good. Um, Someone asked a question actually on YouTube. Which is it? Utena? Is that how you pronounce it?
Utena, yeah.
Utena. So Anna Danaran asked you which Utena character would have the most interesting assortment of skills, and what would their fort cabinet have inside?
That was a very funny question, and I'm so glad you sent that to me in advance because I would not know what to say on the spot. Um, I think I would have to go with Saionji. He is one of the worst. Well, there's a lot of bad people on that show, but he's a bad guy.
Mhm.
Um, And but he's a really funny bad guy because he's not even good at being bad. Like he's one of those like fools
Yeah.
who tries really hard to suck up to the patriarchy but is really bad at doing it. So I think that he would just have a lot of really fun ways. Like his skills would be absolutely atrocious. He would have like -10 on like almost everything except maybe physical attributes. Um, and in terms of his thought cabinet, I think he would probably have. I had to look at the list because I haven't played this game in so long, but I think the funniest one that would go with his character is Anti-Object Task Force,
Yeah, yeah.
which is basically where you get healed every time you hit something,
Hmm.
because that guy loves hitting stuff. And specifically for him, he would get a +1 every time he hits a woman, but because
Wow.
that happens in the show. And but at the end of it, I think he would somehow end up with an inexplicable feminist agenda at the end of it all. I like
Yeah,
to imagine. Yeah.
yeah. What about movies or a particular movie? And if you want, you can talk about Look Back at length because I know that you've had a great time this week going to see that.
You've done your homework? Yeah. I mean, Look Back is, for those of you that don't know, it's a movie that just came out this year, and incredibly, it got like a North American release within the year too, which is pretty rare for anime movies that are not, like extremely mainstream. And this is not one that I would say is extremely mainstream at all, but it somehow has become so. It's a bit of a weird one because it's what's called a one shot when it initially came out. So basically, what that means is that typically when releasing manga, an author will like do things like chapter by chapter. They'll come out weekly. What a one shot is like a contained story all in one go. And sometimes authors do that as a way of like entering into the manga market for the first time, or sometimes they do it because they just want to, do something separate from their normal work. And this is what Tatsuki Fujimoto did. He is the well-known author of Chainsaw Man, if you've heard of that.
I have actually, yeah.
Yeah, so I Chainsaw Man is a very popular shonen, which means like it's basically marketed as boys. It's very action packed. And Look Back is like the complete opposite of any of that. It's a very grounded story about two young girls who are both artists and want to make it as manga artists, basically. But the context behind it is that that a lot of people don't seem to know is that the year that he worked on this was the year that there was a very infamous attack on a famous anime studio called Kyoto Animation, which was very beloved, very well known. They had some of the best animators in the industry in there, and there was an arson attack where tens of them died. And so that was a huge hit to the industry. And the story that Fujimoto tells, there's some parallels to that in Look Back. And we can sort of assume that he probably had friends in that animation studio, and that this hit him deeply. Like he took a break from his regular manga job just to write this one shot, and it's really beautiful. It's like you don't need to know anything about it before going into it. You can just watch the movie. You can just read the one shot. It's very short. It's only like 100 pages or something. So if you've never read any manga before or watched any anime before, that's definitely a good intro.
Oh, thank you for that. That's really cool. And did I see that it had done extraordinarily well in North America as well, right?
Yeah, and I think mostly because people are watching it because they're Chainsaw Man fans, and
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what they're expecting, but they're coming out of it with like a really incredible experience. So I'm happy they're doing
No one's called it woke yet, then, no?
it. No,
What?
no, even though there is LGBTQ in it, but I don't know, the woke mob
Did you
haven't gone
just
after it
did
yet.
you just call it? Do that again for me.
The LGBTQ.
I,
I
I'm
don't know.
I need to practice that because you rolled it off so good that any version I try and do now will bastardize it. But that is
I think you need to train it.
that's how I'm moving forward with pronouncing L. So for anyone that didn't quite catch that, that was LGBTQ said in a beautifully elegant way by Stushi there. Oh, that's amazing.
I spend too much time online, clearly. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Is there any other movies? I mean, that's quite a recent one, but like, is there anything that's kind of peak for you?
So funnily enough, I was looking at what A Thousand Times Resist creators were inspired by, and they mentioned one of my favorite directors, who is Satoshi Kon, also an anime director, because I do watch normal live action stuff, but it doesn't hit. It doesn't hit as hard. So Satoshi Kon is one of my favorite directors, and one of my favorite movies is Millennium Actress, which is also uh it also plays a lot with like time and like swapping between scenes and swapping between time in a way that, oh man, I just love the way that they do it in a way that is like you understand completely what's going on while still being in that state of mind that the protagonist is, which is like bewildered and confused. And
Mm.
um so I guess that there's a theme there in my preferences.
Time travel.
And okay, so time travel, and well, not necessarily time travel, but just like swap, like finding um instances, I guess, across your life over time, and
Mm.
the parallels that happened, 20 years forward to 20 years before, and how those all managed to come together to explain exactly why you are where you are right now and how it came to be. I think that's the kind of
Mm.
storyline that really grabs me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Stushi. Okay, I've got a whole list of stuff I need to watch and a new phrase I need to learn. So that was a very educational discussion for me. So I'm at a loss how to start because I had it all written down, and then loads of stuff happened to Disco Elysium. So I'm going to start with a few questions just around you and YouTube first of all, and then we'll kind of dance around the PMG stuff, no Truce with Capital, and somehow weave that in amongst the absolute mayhem that we've experienced in the last 24 hours. Yeah, it's exciting. So let's talk about you and your YouTube journey first of all. Now, you have the same trait that our friend and colleague Jamrock Hobo has, in that they have the ability to actually control the amount of stuff they put on YouTube and maintain a level of quality. Whereas I am the kind of person that throws a million things at it and hopes for the best. So I envy both of you for that trait. And I guess I'm fascinated by. So when I asked Jamrock Hobo this, he said that he only ever did a video when he felt he had something to communicate. And I get a similar feeling from your YouTube channel in the videos that you do. But if you could put into your own words what your motivators were for going on that YouTube journey and deciding to create videos.
Um, Yeah, it would probably be similar. I think I only make a video if I have seen what's out there and I feel like something is really missing. That's sort of what motivated me to do my first video, which was on Utena. Even though there were many videos out there, it felt like there wasn't one that like gave me what I wanted to see in a video. And it started out as a bit of a challenge to be like, okay, like, don't be an asshole about this. Do you really have anything to say? And so I tried writing that down, and then I actually like delved deep into the community. I got into so many rabbit holes. I learned so much about like the various lore that a lot of people in the community think that is going on. And so it was definitely my most thoroughly researched one, the very first one I ever worked on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And the community response after I released it was incredible. So it really motivated me and made me think that there was something there to my process and to my line of thinking. Um, On the other hand, it was also the pandemic, very, very deep, deep lockdown.
Yep.
And I had no friends and I had nothing to do outside of work. So it was pretty easy to just, well, today I'm going to play video games. Tomorrow I'm going to work on the video. Today I'm going to play video games. Tomorrow I'm going to work, like it was like very, very easy to structure my life around that.
Yep.
In a way that is much more difficult to do now that my life exists again.
Yeah, and no, it's amazing because and even on the back of that, I have to credit your restraint, because you could have easily just become a Utena channel, right? And just gone, right, I'm just gonna chuck loads of this stuff, and it works. You find something that works and you go from there. And I always think it's like really, doubly impressive if you can be, it's you that the channel is about, right? Whereas I never felt like the channel was about me until maybe more recently. It was always about Disco Elysium, and I always have like huge amount of respect for you in particular, that you were able to kind of make it about your message and the things that you wanted to say. So it's really, really impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I have equally as much respect for people who are able to like stick with the topic for so long. Like anytime I see a channel like yours, I'm like, oh, thank God someone's doing it, because I don't have the motivation to do anything like that. Apart from having actual ADHD, it's like also just my interests change so fast, and yeah, I'd get bored so fast.
I, as someone who also has ADHD, I absolutely feel that, and that's why I have to take advantage of the fixation when it comes. So like if I don't, so when that spark hits, I'm like, right, do as much as possible, schedule it, and then when the lull comes, and I'm like, you know how it is. I'm speaking to someone who fully understands here. It is incredibly annoying, but you just adapt, don't you? And I try and prepare my brain as best I can by having that stuff like scheduled in. Um, so I want to remark on, so you have a very journalistic approach to your presentation, and like you articulate your points very eloquently. I'm curious, is there something in your background that involves journalism or writing or anything like that that would play into that?
Thank you. I definitely don't feel that way. I feel like I am surrounded by people that are so much more eloquent than me, and it's actually a point of I don't know, anxiety that I have, I guess, in expressing myself. Like even during this podcast, I feel like I can never get the right words to come out that I want to. And I think that part of the what draws me or someone like me to doing a video essay as opposed to doing like a podcast or anything live is the fact that you can like write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite everything all the time over and over again until you get it close, but never exactly to where you want it. So in terms of my background, I can't say that there's anything specific. I think I've always enjoyed writing, or at least done it, and people have praised me for it. So I've been like, all right, maybe I'll keep doing some of this. I don't have any official training in anything other than a bachelor's degree, which inherently makes you write a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's a fun. The way you shrugged bachelor degree and then went, well, it makes you read a lot. It's really funny.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like took a lot of philosophy classes, which seems to be something common for a lot of YouTubers because
Yeah.
we love to think about things and write them down, I guess. But yeah, nothing much other than that.
Well, it's doubly impressive then that you pull it off in such a way. So another hat tip for you there, Stushi. Um, is there anything, do you have a burning desire at the moment, or have you felt it more recently to do something else? Because I think the last one was no Truce for Capital, right? Which would have been, is that at least a year ago? I can't remember when it was, but yeah, is there any desire to communicate anything in the future?
There's plenty of desire. There's just not enough time. and the desire to go out and do things with friends and loved ones overrides my desire to stay at home editing on my laptop a lot of the time.
Yep.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I have, if you look at all the scripts that I have, I even have a video that's like half edited that is just sitting there gathering dust. So yeah, lots of desire, but when I'm actually going to put it into action, I don't know. The PMG response video that I put out was a miracle that I was able to do it. And it was only because I felt like it was really time bound and that I had to get it out as quickly as possible. And that still took weeks, you know. So for me, putting something out very quickly is very difficult. And that's why I'm like so amazed that you were able to put out the video about all the new studios within a day of it happening. I would just never be able to pull
Well,
something like that off.
that's you know, we touched on ADHD. That's I attribute that exactly to that, because I couldn't let it go,
Yeah.
like I had to. It was
Yeah.
such a whirlwind, and I guess I kind of felt a little bit as well, like there was definitely an element I wanted to be there first. Well, probably not. Probably not.
Mm.
Some people are really fast. Like, I don't know, IGN have probably got 1 million views on their story about it already, but I kind of just wanted to be hot on it. But thank you. I will say as well, by the way, just one other thing, because I wanted to watch your video on Night in the Woods, but then obviously I backed out of it on account of not wanting to be spoiled or anything. But I have seen I've seen your intro, and I really have huge respect for your commitment to the bit, because you are dressed as a little cat and you have whiskers and you even do some meows, and yeah, I think so. That's something I would never have the confidence to do, so a huge amount of respect for you for committing to that.
Yeah, I mean some of my Utena videos, like I'm just like dressed in costume the whole time throughout it, but it's more subtle. But yeah, I like that's the most fun part of it. I guess like I don't really have much of a theater background. I'm not much of a theater kid, but if I could, I would be basically
Yeah,
at this age.
yeah, yeah. And even in No Truce for Capital, there are some subtle ones. Like, I think you've got an orange jacket on, right? And you've got the
I've got my Kim cosplay on. Yeah.
yeah, well,
Very
yeah, exactly,
casual
yeah,
Kim.
yeah, exactly, yeah. I was doing it to
Yeah.
service, just saying the jacket. Um, okay, so that's a lovely segue, actually. So let's go back in time a little bit. There was a documentary once upon a time by People Make Games, and it was all about the controversy that had come about the Zaim studio fallout. What was your initial experience watching that documentary the first time you saw it? Can you remember?
I was so excited to watch it. I
Hmm.
had seen some Twitter reactions around it because it'd been like a couple of days before I got around to watching it myself. And so I knew that there was some controversy brewing already, but I chalked it up to Twitter being Twitter and kind of ignored it because I have a lot of respect for PMG and their videos. I was already like watching all their videos anyway. Um, and so I was really, really excited. I was like, oh my God, they're going to do such a good job at this. They're going to do the deep dive that we all want. And it was that for the first 20 minutes. And
Hmm.
then the rest of it was just a slowly escalating frustration. I don't know, like emptiness, a void of respectable feelings towards them.
Hmm.
Um, and just a feeling that they were way in over their heads.
Yeah.
But something wasn't right, and I didn't necessarily have the words to really explain it immediately. But over the coming days, as I talked it through with some of my friends, as I read a lot of online opinion on it, it very clearly consolidated in my head how potentially dangerous that video could be to the public perception of what was going on.
Agreed. And so I'll share what I think are probably similar feelings. I was way late to it actually, and I think part of that was I really don't think I wanted to hear it the first time. I don't want to know. I didn't want to know how bad this theft was. I think because it was very sore subject for me that, and it still is. So I think there was a resistance from my maybe subconsciously to not watch. It took me a long time. I didn't read anything about it. I stayed well away from it, and then obviously over time, I kind of thought, what kind of Disco Elysium fan am I that I'm not watching this? And I thought, do you know what? And even late to it, I went in kind of blind because obviously I'd kind of shut myself off from it, and I was like, this, like you, I was like, this is going to be in like Pandora's box. I'm going to see everything, especially how it starts. It gets really exciting. They're like, we're going to talk to this person, this person, this person. I was like, oh my God, this is it. And then the thing that really struck me was when the Ilmar Compass interview came about in the video. And I honestly think, and this is probably not fair to Chris and the team, but this is just how I felt watching it. Certainly in contrast to how he spoke to Robert, etc. Felt like he was scared and intimidated by someone who had been in this arena and danced this dance plenty of times before. Like Ilmar Compass is that's a person I've seen plenty of times in environments similar to that, where like he doesn't flinch. Ilmar, at no point does he show any kind of emotion. That's someone who's, they know what they're doing in a conversation like that, and it always felt like they were right on the edge of asking the really difficult question, and they kind of excuse it away by going, oh well, there is a full interview that you can watch, and then they ask all of the really tough questions to the audience. And I was like, not sure about this, I'm not feeling like, and I know there's probably bias on my part because I root for the artists in any argument like this. But yeah, that was my feeling. It was kind of like, ooh, I don't think you maybe have the balls for this, to be honest.
Yeah, I felt similarly. I felt like, so first of all, I would not have been able to do a better job than what Chris did
Yeah,
in that
yeah, it's a
scenario,
good point
right? Like
actually. Yeah.
I know I don't have the skills to go against someone like Ilmar.
Mm,
There was very visibly signs of anxiety
mm,
that I know I would do the same. Like there's a lot of playing with like the Chris did with like his shirt and like just general visible discomfort in
yeah.
his body. And then you looked at Ilmar and he was so confident and so just like had nothing, no fear, nothing to lose kind of vibe to him. And it was just clear that it was not the right, it was not a balanced conversation at all.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and so I guess to me, what it felt like was that it would have been better to just not do it at all than to put out there that kind of conversation, because it felt like PMG wasn't prepared to go against that kind of person whose communication style is inherently like made so they are prepared, they're overly confident no matter what happens that what they are saying is the truth, even if they're lying through gritted teeth. Like it just, their strength is their ability to represent capital's interests
Mm,
in a way that makes it seem like they're not doing that, right? And it takes a really, really experienced, really skilled interviewer to be able to get those kind of people to crack.
yeah.
And I think they just underestimated the effort that it would take.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, it was just like, okay, it would have been better to just cut this out. I know you went through all the effort of doing this, but it does not provide anything of value to a viewer. And also, if you are gonna put it out, then at the very least provide a shit ton of editorializing around it to make it really clear, well, Ilmar is saying this, but we should be wary of the fact that, this and this and this happened. There was a little bit of that, but I felt like there was not enough,
Well,
especially compared to the interview with Kurvitz and those guys.
Yeah, I felt like he made excuses for him actually on his behalf. He kind of took it as he took it on face value that, oh, we can't get this or we can't provide that. I was like, it was all a bit ropey, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to assume bad intent on PMG's part, because I think, the sad part, I think, is that they were really trying, and they did such a good job with the first portion. I just rewatched it actually in preparation for this, just because I wanted to make sure I had the facts right. But it is actually so well done, that first portion where they just lay out the facts of the situation. And I think if they'd stopped it there, no notes, great job.
Yeah.
But I think they just went in way over their heads with that part.
Yeah, agreed. And we've kind of alluded to it, but yes, no hard, nothing against PMG. They're an incredible group of people. Do not doubt for a second how difficult that must have been. But yeah, you needed a real sharp operator in that room. And I think by contrast, when you look at the interview with Kurvitz and Rostov, Kurvitz is a very handsy, expressive, passionate man. He's open, right? He's friendly, and all of a sudden you could kind of see a flipping of the roles that you saw in the Ilmar interview, where all of a sudden Chris had this kind of air of, well, I've got all of this information. This, must be true. I've got all of these stories about you, etc., etc. And Kurvitz probably could have addressed some things a little bit better, but I don't think it did enough to address the fact that. So there's the shadow that hangs over all of the documentary, and I include Caspar and Justin's interview bits as well. I think it's Justin, right? The blonde-haired guy. The shadow that hangs over all of it is that it seems to me, or at least feels as though there was lots of Zaum heavies influencing the go-between. And it seems to me that there was stuff that was preventing Robert, etc., from saying or doing certain things. And likewise, the communication throughout those people seemed to be kind of blocked or influenced in some way by the higher ups. And I don't think they addressed that well enough either.
I think ultimately my biggest issue with it, with the whole approach of the video, was that there is currently still an active lawsuit going on, and obviously every single person in that documentary is going to try and present themselves in a way that will help them in the lawsuit, right? It becomes a factual piece of evidence that courts can use afterwards. This video can be used for that, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that PMG maybe didn't seem aware of that, or maybe didn't want to think of it that way or something, I think led to the way that they presented it, as though this had already settled, and now they're bringing their opinion on it, which is that, these are the bad guys, Ilmar, who knows, and oh no, the poor workers, right? That's sort of their narrative spin on it, which I think is fine if the dust has settled and now you're just going in after the fact and giving your own opinion on it. But they presented it as though, first of all, it was a factual showing of both sides, of all sides, and then also didn't acknowledge the fact that, the lawsuit is still ongoing. There's still so much that can come out of it, and it felt like they were presenting it as though it was all a done deal already, which is what bothered me.
Yeah, and in particular, Robert, you can see why he wouldn't say the words "I'm sorry" to X, Y, and Z, because that's one of the criticisms that's leveled at him is like, oh, his apology was half baked. It's like, well, he can't.
Yeah.
The minute he
He
does
got if
that,
he gives an apology, that's it for the lawsuit, you know? Like I don't know the details of it, but yeah, like you can't admit fault to anything while the court case is still ongoing. That's just ridiculous to expect. I don't know.
and it's so the damage isn't like it's still there. I've seen in the last 24 hours on the back of the new announcements. So you get one person say, "Oh, where's Kurvitz? Why isn't Kurvitz working with such and such?" And then someone will reply, "Who the fuck would want to work for that guy?" And I'm like you've got like that's it now. There's no erasing that that kind of discourse. And this is, as you rightly point out, that's the danger of putting something out there, and they do present it as fact, because I think even the video's titled, I can't remember what it's like, what's really going on or something like that, and it's
Yeah.
kind of like these are the facts. But yes, yeah, so it's a fast moving. Well, it's not fast moving. That's the complete opposite of what it is. But it's still a moving and living organism, that court case, and yeah, they dangerous, as you
Yeah.
rightly point out.
And I
Um,
think I mean the fact that the whole video ends on PMG wagging their finger at Kurvitz and Rostov for not apologizing. Like that really set the tone for what their real goal with that documentary was, right? Which is to say these people are not good to work with. Like that's what it felt like the whole video was about. And it's
yeah,
what about all the legal shit going on, you know? What about the real stealing of millions of euros potentially, allegedly, you know? Like I don't know.
do you think they were
It was weird.
like? There's a kind of blindness there, like when I think of the good faith, like, and I'd like to, I really do believe they went in with it good faith. And do you think maybe they were bamboozled a little bit by the volume of so-called, allegations of workplace bullying and toxicity, and they've kind of done well, the scales are balanced heavily this way. We've got two people complaining about that guy, but a whole list of people, and then they've kind of gone too far with, well, we're protecting the workers here because workplace stocks, and we all know that that's a very modern and serious topic around how workplaces function, and I'm worried that they've kind of gone too far the other way as a result of that.
Totally. I think that they are rightfully concerned about workers' rights. I think that's one of the things that they do really well. Um, but yeah, I think they lost the plot a little bit. And like you're saying, like they heard so much against this group of 2 to 3 people that, like you mentioned during the interview, it was very clear that Chris was not there to play nice. He
Mm,
came at it in a very combative way, which, you know, if you're going to do that, then do it for both Ilmar and the other group. You know, just come at it with the same level of energy. That's fine. Um, yeah, and I think they really got bamboozled, I think. And this is the part also that bugged me is the lack of editorializing, like I said, with regards to explaining to the audience in very plain terms, hey, these people right now that we're talking to are current employees of Vilmar Campus. So
mm.
anything they say should be taken with a grain of salt, because if they say anything bad about him, they might get fired. You know, like if they had just said a sentence like that, I think a lot of us would have had a much better time, a much softer read of their take.
Agreed.
But the fact that they didn't do anything like that and just made you take what they say at face value is ridiculous, right? Because they are literally employees and they got fired right after that came out. So I
Yep.
don't know. I don't know if those things are linked, but
Yeah, it's
yeah.
and the tragedy in all of this is and I think you remark on it actually in the video, is the kind of level of the ball being dropped here. This is the Elysium IP is like lightning in a bottle, limitless gold. And somehow we are now in a world today where we're probably never going to see that particular world, but we're already at a stage where people have gone, fuck it, I'm gonna make my own. and we're like you're staring down the barrel of three brand new studios. That's the tragedy. Like, but it's not from the rubble and all of that. We've got lots of good stuff come from the fallout now. I'm happy to say. Um, and we will talk about that very brief, like in a minute. But I just want to address one more point on your video. PMG actually responded to you directly and commented on your video, and there was a bit of back and forth. Now, we know how divisive a topic this whole zone fallout has become, and we know what the internet is like. So, first of all, I want to ask how did you feel about their response at the time, and what was your take on it at the time, and then I'll follow up with another question.
Yeah, I was both surprised and not surprised. I guess I was surprised. So, first of all, my initial script, again, to the point of rewriting everything, was much more harsh. It was much more, like, PMG, you should have done this better, should have done blah, blah, blah kind of vibe. And specifically in a section of my video, I said, I think you should take this video down or edit it down to remove like the parts of it that are not factual because you are interfering in an active court case. Like I specifically had like a sentence like that in it, and then through discussion with people I was sort of convinced to tone it down a little bit. And so I did that, and I'm glad I did that actually, because I think that is what the fact that I approached them with more openness and less of a judgmental tone is what made it so that they, I think, responded to me in the first place. I think that if I hadn't done that, they would have probably just like not bothered. So in that way, I sort of expected some sort of response. I didn't expect it to be as thorough or as long as it was. If you go into my YouTube comments, you've probably seen it, but it's like you have to scroll to see their response fully.
Yeah.
And I was really glad that they took the time to do that because it felt like they were engaging in good faith. I also got a personal message from Chris, and his message was basically an apology for messaging me which was kind of sweet. He was just like, I know it must be a little scary, to receive a message like this, which it wasn't for me, but I can see how it might be for someone else. And so I appreciated all of that. It's not like we're best friends or anything, but I appreciate the fact that they tried to make a human connection there. And yeah, in terms of their actual response, it was kind of, I had the documentary itself. It didn't feel like it added anything new. I don't think it felt more like they were trying to excuse their decisions rather than admit to having messed anything up particularly or wanting to make things right. I don't know what your take on it is, but it felt like they didn't really have much.
No, it felt like
response.
it felt like a solicitor, or sorry, what a lawyer would write. That's what it felt like to me. It was we did this, we did like clarification of the work that we'd done to ensure we were meeting XYZ criteria. That's how it felt to me. And then I saw that you responded, and then they kind of responded with a kind of, well, that's the big question, isn't it? Who knows this? And well, you had the opportunity to know. Like you like nobody had the skeleton key that you had at that time, and the ability to answer those questions. I'm sure they regret some of it. I'm sure they do. But then we'll never know. And I think actually they've already moved on to a much grander and the next documentary. Which, by the way, I think it's worth mentioning. Their recent documentary was about which wars games are funding, and I haven't watched it yet. But that as a concept alone, and I think, do you know the guy Tamor Hussein who works over at GameSpot? Okay, so I think he was involved in some way, or kind of was a motivation for doing it. Obviously talks a lot about Russia, Ukraine, Palestine, all of the things that you would expect to be covered there. So yeah, that's probably the next one for me to watch. So just to follow up to that, I mentioned the fact that people online, well, you've got a combination of lovely people and people who are a bag of dicks. And what was the percentage? How did you feel the community were responding? I think is the broader question I'd like to ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think that I was expecting a lot worse, and I have received almost no hate towards my video at
Amazing.
all from anyone, and that's been a really nice surprise. It might be because it's not that big, like the PMG video has almost 1 million views now, which is insane
Hmm.
for a video that has so much wrong with it. And mine has like what 30K or something. So it's
Well,
like
I think it's more than that, isn't it? I'm sure you're on more than
uh
that.
I don't know. I don't really check. But yeah, anyway, whatever it is, it's nowhere near
No,
PMG's
yeah,
amount. So it's just like I mean, I'm sure that a lot of the people who came to my video came because they have the same feelings about it, and so they found it as a way of, because I myself was trying to find something out there. Like I was looking for people who were expressing, again, sort of a similar theme in terms of like I'd only make a video if I see that there's no one out there that's saying this thing, right? So there were no articles, there were no other videos like it. So I was like, oh my God, I guess I have to do it. So that was sort of
I'm glad you did. And I did get a sense. I mean, I've only seen the YouTube response, and I do remember Reddit referencing it, but it would have been at a time where I was avoiding engaging with it. So it wasn't until later. But yeah, certainly in the comments, I saw lots of people kind of making similar points to you and backing you on that. So it was really, really good. And
there
if
was like Reddit is a big source for my video actually, because I was scrolling through it all night, just like reading so many things, and I specifically like had arguments that other people had made on Reddit, and I tried to source them as much as I could remember in my video. But yeah, a lot of it was just like community contributions, so
yeah,
can't really take credit for most of it.
no, someone's got to collate it, haven't they? That's the thing.
Mm.
No, and I'm glad that you didn't get any of the negativity, because that could have very easily happened, because we do see it now. There are people who like to side against curvids, etc. But no, it's good. It's good. I'm glad to hear that. So we've already touched on it a couple of times. We are in a world now where so we have one studio called, I have to remember my own thing here now. There's a studio called Longdew, which I'm not. This is the one we know the least about, right? We just know it's
Yeah,
a bunch of Zayn people making a game.
a bunch of devs and then Bungie games and Rockstar Games people,
Yes, that's
which
it.
is a very funny combination.
Yeah,
Uh,
the one named writer, been around since about 2003 with credits like here and there, but the two main ones were Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and Destiny 2. Now, I'm not here to judge anybody, but I don't remember those being anywhere near Pulitzers or anything like that for their beautiful writing. So we'll see maybe about that one. Um, the second, what are they called now? Sorry, Dark Math
yeah,
Games is, well, the name that we know is Timo Albert as the programmer, who I was aware of through Zame. And I'd be interested to know what your feelings are on the links to Core Kender. So Core Kender is talked about at length through the PMG documentary, and has a really strange history with Zame. Like, he's the original backer. He's the guy who originally said, yes, let's do it. Let's make a game. I'll fund you, etc. Then obviously is a big part of Zame and Disco Elysium, and then weirdly during the fallout took them to court or was suing them, and then all of a sudden was like, no, never mind, I won't do that. And in fact, here's my shares, so you can be majority shareholder, and I will sail off into the sunset. So yeah, what's your take on that?
I So I specifically rewatched the PMG video just to refresh myself on the facts of who this guy was because
Hmm.
I'd forgotten a lot of the details. And oh my God, he is such a funny man. Like, he is the most chaotic figure in the entire story
Mm.
because he started off as a writer himself, and then he's the one who initially backed Kurvitz's book.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Oh, why don't we make a video?" So it was his idea to make a video game, allegedly. And so then he went out and tried to find more funders for it, and that's how he got everyone else involved. And then yeah, towards the end, he like sued a guy and then was like, "Ah, never mind," and then sold all his shares to the guy, like essentially causing this majority stake in
Mm.
this in Zom, like causing the whole well, I don't know if he caused the whole issue, but you know, like so it feels like just a very chaotic person to be aligned with. It feels like you'll never know what he's going to do next.
Mm.
Um, so I have no clue. I mean, the this is the studio that we actually have a trailer for the game for,
Yep.
Night Shift. And I mean, it looks cool so far. It looks basically like a Disco Elysium 2 vibe, with the same layout, and except we've got a girl protagonist this time. Woohoo! And um, I don't know. I'm just very skeptical of where that studio is going to go with
Mm.
someone like him as one of the former directors. So it's not him actually a director right now, it's his brother,
That's it. Yeah.
which opens up a whole new can of worms, but he
Mm.
used to be a director there. So I wonder if maybe they did that to reduce some of the controversy or if they really don't want him involved. We don't know. This is all speculation, right? But I don't know. I think that's the funniest studio for me. I'm just like, really?
Mm.
This guy?
Yeah. It's
This like whirlpool of chaos, and I don't know.
yeah.
It's funny.
I'm sure he tried to make some terms on his exit around maintaining a level of royalties to the sequel, right? Disco Elysium 2. So I wonder if that somehow plays into him not being
Mhm.
able to be officially named. And, well, if you've got a brother, then I'm sure they're willing to help. I don't know. I don't know how this stuff works. It's all speculation.
What do
And
you feel about it? What do you think's
I'm
going on?
I'm torn. Um, I really don't know what to make of Corkender. As you say, it's impossible to kind of nail down exactly what he's about and how he goes through life in such a whirlwind manner, or what it seems to be. It's very strange. And I have to be honest, it does leave a tiny sour taste that he's linked to it. Um, because again, I like to know exactly where I stand with people, and when I look at people involved with the projects that I want to support, I would also kind of like to know that it's all nice and legit and all the rest of it. And I just feel like a little bit that there's the doubt there with him being present. However, it is the only thing, as you say, we've got a trailer for, and I mean, I did love what it looked like. I have to say, like the dialogue is very similar to the female shivers kind of vibe in Disco Elysium. There's, and I tried to look at it objectively as well, without calling it try hard, or really like. There's a few lines in there that are really kind of just metaphorical and describing things very similar to the way that Disco Elysium does. That like it takes these real world things and applies them to feelings. It's really cool. And I was like, okay, I'll let it fly for now. Like it sounds lovely and it's not cheesy or corny. Like it does, it works. Um, and yeah, I think for me, like it seems to be as a physical form the closest thing we've ever had to disco since, because it's got a dialogue box on the side. It's got little colours that indicate. I think the skills you do see, or whatever they are calling them, there's curiosity and drive. So there's a lot going on there, even as a little dice roll mechanic. So for all intents and purposes, you could say that that's very disco. But yeah, it's only a short thing, and we'll see. We'll see.
Mm.
I guess there's an element which you can't escape of always looking at these things and thinking, oh well, you like, we can't win. On the one hand, we want another Disco Elysium, something or other. But then on the other, we're going to be like, oh, well, you've just copied. You've literally copied pasted. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what do you want? What do we want from that? Do you know? Um,
Yeah.
so
But the thing is, oh, sorry.
no, go on. I was, yeah, it's good. Go.
The thing that I like when someone says, "Oh, this follows in the spirit of Disco Elysium," right? Or is a Disco Elysium sequel. The first thing that comes to mind for me isn't the mechanics. You know, it's not the dialogue box and the dice rolling.
Mm.
It's not even necessarily the skills and the thought cabinet. To me, the spirit of it is in the world building, is in the writing, is in the characterization, is in like the soul that it has, right? So whether it's an isometric grid with like a dialogue box, or if it's like a 2D platformer that has, you know, like it looks like Undertale or whatever, you know, like I don't really care what it looks like as much personally.
Yep.
And I feel like I do like the vibes of this game, and even if it has nothing to do with Disco Elysium, I might still enjoy it. But I think I would like it if people were less hung up on like the aesthetic of it, you know, like just because it looks like it, just because it has the same dialogue box, like that doesn't really mean anything, you
Yeah.
know, like I don't know, that's how I feel about it, I guess.
No, I agree. I mean, you or I could go and make a dialogue box with something called Inky or whatever it's. I think it's called
Yeah.
Inky. What they used. Doesn't mean anything I produce will be very disco at all. I think it's a great point. But a lovely segue again, Stushi, because you talk about soul, and let's talk about Summer Eternal. Because if you want, I mean, wow, just wow. Like, okay, so to summarize, this is a um, studio defining itself as an art collective led by Argo Tulik, Dora Kinsich, amongst others, Lenville Brown including in that name, list of names. And God, their manifesto, wow, just reading that was like Everard himself penned the
Yeah.
I mean that like I'm pretty sure I can't remember where they definitely did say every player or game
Every
member of the board, right?
every worker member of the board, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, look, I mean, the very essence and soul of Disco Elysium, if you want to find it, is in Summer Eternal. I think it's 100% like worker focused and protecting creators and the works that they put together. The best website design I think I've seen in eons. It's just talk about landing it. Yeah, sorry, I'm waffling now, but I would love to know, how are you feeling about Summer Eternal and what's your response to their announcement?
I yeah, I think I'm still processing it because to me there's been this like very big elephant in the room when it comes to Disco Elysium where everything that they talk about in the game so clearly points to an ideology that is so pro-worker and anti-capital and all these things, and yet the circumstances under which Disco Elysium exists is so contrary to that, right?
Mm,
Like you have this company that is owned by billionaires and funded by I don't know if they're millionaires at least, um, and you've got like this internal strife. You've got a lack of worker solidarity within the studio, allegedly, and all these things, right? And yet they came up with this art piece that feels like it should come out of that kind of practical material reality, and yet it's not. And
mm,
so I'm very, very curious to see what can come out of trying to put those ideas into practice, which is what it feels like Summer Eternal is trying to do. I have no idea if they'll succeed, but it makes me very happy to see that they're trying.
mm,
It looks like, and it doesn't feel like it's just a shell. It doesn't feel like based on what I've seen and I've read through all their blogs, it doesn't feel like they're just pretending. It doesn't feel like they're just saying these things to get like attention and crowdfunding and stuff like that. Like they have thought through the structure and structuring in a way the workers will always be majority owners of the company through the worker co-op structure, and they are working with these EU organizations that work with these types of worker-owned companies specifically to set it up in a way that makes sense for them. And they're setting it up in Croatia, in Zagreb, which is like, don't want to get too deep into it, but like a lot of the workers are from former Yugoslavia, and so the fact that they're setting it up there, I feel like has special significance. And a lot of them are in Europe, as opposed to doing it in the UK where Zome was set up for legal purposes. So it feels like they're making their structure more difficult to finance, but trying to get something. Well, okay, they're not trying to make it more difficult, but by doing those things, they inherently make it more difficult for venture capital to finance it, right? But it seems like they're doing that on purpose in order to access the type of funding that is more like from all of us, from the people, from both the users and the workers and external stakeholders as necessary. So I don't know. I'm excited. I think that they seem like a cool group of people, and they've shown us the faces and the most names out of any of the three studios so far. And even though they're not even officially incorporated yet, they're still going to do that next year in 2025. I don't know. Like, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on them and see what happens there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly exciting. It's interesting they all announced at the same time, right?
Yeah.
I've seen
What do
it.
you make of that?
Well, there's two things at play. It's the 5th birthday of Disco Elysium on Tuesday, which is a more romantic link, I think, that you could attach to it. But I have seen people speculate that it's more likely that there were non-compete clauses on the back of them leaving Zame or being dismissed from Zame. Is that I could imagine that being part of the terms of that contract being ended, but I don't know. Interestingly, Summer Eternals dates were the 14th on the blog originally. Now they say the 11th. So it seems that they were prompted by the stories already breaking and thought, well, okay, we need to go now, sort of thing. Although, if I was to say one thing, I think they've already took command of the narrative, which is good, I think. Certainly from my own personal viewpoint, and I guess yours, but what their philosophy seems to be. And it's a no-brainer, really, that message is the one that would connect with the Disco Elysium audience the most. So it should come as no surprise that they are commanding the narrative. But then I kind of think they could have easily done that on the Tuesday. I mean, it's neither here nor there. I'm just, spitballing here. But they could have had even more of the attention to themselves, possibly. But, as it's transpired, they've got all the attention anyway. So Dora Klincic, I hope she doesn't mind me saying, but she is someone I speak to quite regularly. And I really hope that continues, because if you read the blog, and this is what I really like about Argo and Dora specifically, because I don't know the rest, but Dora, I know, wrote an amazing piece on control, which was littered with lots of references to Marxism and talks about capital and the objects within control. And when you read through the blog posts on the actual website, God, it just oozes with passion, right? Like, you can't fake that. You cannot fake that. And it's got me very excited about the future. And you know what? We still might see Red Info. We still might see Zame. These are two very real possibilities. So
Yeah, there could be 5, I guess.
yeah,
That are all the spiritual successors to Disco Elysium. It's actually really funny to me that they all I mean, not just to me, to everyone. It's so funny that they all announced the same day. Like it there's been so many memes coming out about it at this point, right? But it's especially funny to me because I have a lot of friends in journalism, and the number one thing they say is like never announce anything big, never launch anything on a Friday. That is the worst day to launch anything. And yet all three of them did that on a Friday, as opposed to waiting for Tuesday. And I have no idea why they would do that, because Tuesday is actually the perfect day, according to a lot of journalists, to launch
Hmm.
this kind of thing. So I'm a little bit confused at all that, to be honest.
Hmm.
And the news was coming so fast, one after another. Um, and I wouldn't be too surprised. I would be amazed, but if on Tuesday we hear something maybe from Red Info, I'm probably being
I don't think you are actually, because I,
but
I'm speaking to Martin Luiga on Tuesday,
okay,
and I know
cool.
and I know he's doing something, but he won't tell me what,
Okay.
and he won't tell me what
Is
until
Martin with Red Info?
he's not named, but he referenced the names that you would expect and says he can talk about it. So let's see what he says.
Nice. Yeah, and like you mentioned that feels like Summer Eternal is grabbed hold of the narrative, and
Mm,
I think that if Kurvitz and Rostov or even Hinpere or any one of those people launch something after this, well, maybe it's good that Summer Eternal launched today and or yesterday and not on Tuesday, if that other group is also planning on doing anything, because that is definitely where a lot of the online discourse is pointing towards. Like any comment, people will be like, "Where's Kurvitz? Where's Kurvitz?" and blah 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 blah. And
yeah,
I think it's a little bit disrespectful, to be honest, that people are being so uh
I agree.
blatant about that.
Mm.
But yeah,
Yeah, just that's an interesting point actually, and I think it's weird. It's the culture of idolizing, right? He's become the figurehead, and thus Elysium or any form of Elysium thereafter without him is seen by a lot of people as, I don't know, not being legit or whatever. But I think people forget that there are lots of writers and lots of people who, Argo, for example, like you don't get Kuno without Argo. He wrote all of Kuno. So, and I'm going to do him disservice. I can't remember which one, but he mentions on the documentary that he was very proud of the characters he had. Like Kuno is arguably like one of the most interesting, layered, and multifaceted characters in the whole game. So yeah, I think people just need to let's respect them all equally. I think, and they're all very capable.
totally. And I think it's like, you can be, and this is where I stand, like I think that the world of Elysium is one thing, and you can want certain people to be involved in more stories about that specifically, which is where I think that, Kurvitz should definitely be involved in telling more stories about that world, given his initial book about it, and all the work that he and um, the former Studio Zom, not the actual studio, but the
The,
art collective Zom put into it.
yep.
Um, like I don't think it would make a lot of sense for, I don't know, whatever one of these other studios are called, to try and make
Mm,
something within the studio, within the world of Elysium. But to do something in the spirit of that, to do something in the spirit of what they all contributed towards, amazing.
yep.
More cakes for me,
Yes. I always like more cake. Okay. I mean, it's so fresh and raw at the moment. I could talk about this all day and just
Yes.
whimsically dream about the future of Elysium. But we do have lives, so we're on to strange to call it the Disco Elysium section because we've talked about nothing but Disco Elysium, right? But these are just the questions about the game which I like to ask everybody. Okay. So first of all, what was your history with Disco Elysium? How did you discover the game and first play it?
So I had seen so much stuff online about it for years. I'd watched many video essays. And I was like, yeah, this is a game I should play eventually. It's sort of like Outer Wilds. It's a game that I know I will play eventually. I haven't played Outer Wilds yet.
Same.
And I'm sure I will love it once I do, but it's like, when it becomes so monumentous in your mind, it becomes harder to start it. And then I got COVID in New Year's 2022, 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent that New Year's Eve at home, locked up, and I was like, I've got at least a week by myself of doing nothing. I might as well play something that I know will grasp me fully. Like I assumed it would do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was right. And it completely just like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that during COVID because it just made and yeah, that's how I first played it.
It's a similar story. Lots of people say similar things. It's interesting, like COVID prompted a lot of people into playing Disco Elysium. Same with Death Stranding. Like both of those games were, for me, COVID games. For the same reasons, I guess, because they seemed weird. So I was like, well, if I'm going to play the weird thing, I'll do it while I'm stuck indoors. So yeah, very similar experience. What's your elevator pitch to anybody who you would recommend Disco Elysium to?
I'm so bad at it. I try to get people into it all the time, but I think I make it too big in their minds because I'm like, it's the best written game of all time. It's the funniest game. And so I think in their minds it becomes this like really big important thing. So I think I need to get better at being just like, yeah, it's a good game. Whatever, you should check it out.
Yeah.
It's chill, But yeah, I don't know. I've successfully gotten one person to play it though, which is also YouTuber Lily Alexandre.
Oh yeah.
You may know, but yeah. So if she ever makes any content about it, because of me,
That
thank
was
me
that
for
was
it.
that was recent that she played it as well, right? Because
Yeah,
I
she played it
remember
this year.
I remember her tweeting about it, and then I remember she tweeted something else, I don't know, a week later or something, completely off topic, but I'd done, the Harry Dubois speech bubble thing above her tweet.
Yeah. I actually, yeah, I sent that to her and was like, look, Lily, they're making memes with Disco Elysium about you now. And you can understand it now.
Yeah, I thought, well, you're new, and like she was obviously excited and like going through that thing we all went through, like, oh, you were right, Disco Elysium is amazing. I thought, well,
Yeah.
let's welcome her into the community in the best way possible.
Yeah. No, that was good.
No, that's good. Yeah, but she's quite artistically inclined already, right? That's her whole shtick, right? So it couldn't have been a hard sell, or was it?
No, the only hard sell part of it is that she has so many, like, she reads so much, she consumes so much various types of media that it's hard to get it on her list.
Mm.
And she plays a lot of very cool video games also. So, I mean, she's one of the people that recommends Outer Wilds to me and Kentucky Road Zero, whatever that's called.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got stuff on my list that she said I should play, so it's my turn. But yeah, so it's more like it's hard to get it at the top of her list. I don't know why she started. I think a bunch of us, like she had some other friends that also told her to do it, so it finally made the top of her list.
Peer pressure, yeah. I haven't played those two games you've mentioned either, and I need to, because obviously people are constantly telling me how disco it is.
Yeah.
Okay, who's your favourite character in the game?
So, if I'm being honest with myself, it would have to be Kim, but that's a boring answer. So instead, I'm gonna go with Estelle. I really, really love Estelle. She has so much melancholy in her, so much sadness. Every time I interacted with her, I just felt like I wanted to give her a big, big hug. But it's also one of my favorite interactions of the whole game comes from playing with her, from talking to her. And it's when Harry wants to give her a hat and she doesn't want to take it. And then he has a whole breakdown over it and just like starts stomping on the ground and crying, and Estelle just looks at you and is like, are you okay? And then Kim takes you aside. That's like when I played that the first time, I was just like laughing out loud in my bedroom like a maniac. It was like one of the best video game moments of my life. So
Yeah, I absolutely love a cell. Obviously that particular moment you're talking about is incredible, and like you, it was one of those where I was in hysterics when I first saw it. There's also the contact Mike nonsense, like when Encyclopedia
yes,
starts going on about
so good.
contact Mike. Um, and there's did you do the silver bird check with a cell? I think
Remind
it's
me.
so if you talk to her in the church afterwards, so you can go around all of the ravers and kind of get to know them all a little bit better. But if you talk to a cell at length, you kind of get a sense that she's very, very comfortable and knows exactly how to talk to police officers. And
Right. Yes.
I think she says a phrase that's Romanian. I'm sure someone told me it was Romanian, which translated to the silver bird.
Mm.
Um, But anyway, you kind of find out that she's the daughter of a crime lord, right, or some sort of big
Okay.
kind of criminal. And she talks about the fact that the police used to obviously regularly be bothering her or her parents, and she'd been there when the police raided her home, and now she's kind of a living
Numb to it.
with Andre, and yeah, exactly. And this is just this is the incredible thing about Disco Elysium. Like, you can scratch the surface and see a little bit of a person, but if you're willing to pursue
Yeah.
and talk to people more, you find out, like every human being in the world, there is way more than the surface. Yeah, great choice. I do love a cell. um do you have a recommended character build? What would you encourage people to pour their points into, Stushi?
So I would really recommend that people go with the most insane build possible. So don't try to like make what a normal person would be. I think that it makes the game so much more fun, and you see much more of those like outbursts from Harry that you wouldn't get otherwise. So I think empathy is really good because it really lets you get those details from people. Like it lets you see things that people are hiding behind their eyes and whatnot. So I really, really like empathy. I love drama because it makes you very dramatic.
Yeah.
Shivers obviously because it you are either clinically insane or you can perceive things that are not there somehow.
Hmm.
And then I think perception, so that you can, again, like really see the small details about people and get to know them. I find that that's like the most interesting part to me of like just really digging deep into each and every individual person, becoming the human can opener, right? Like
Hmm.
I think that's what's the most fun type of build for me, as opposed to like an encyclopedia guy or like a strong guy or something like that.
No, agreed. And you touched on something interesting there. There's no harm in like pouring 7 points into physique and having the rest like really low, because there's so much hidden within. Like, you could succeed a check, and then it will do another check passive on like a different skill. And if you fail that, then you get a passive success on the back of it. Like, it's so complicated, the way that the skills interact. So yeah, that's good advice. And what would your signature skill, if you could pick one, what would your signature skill be?
So again, I have the boring, honest option, which would be either like conceptualization or empathy. I think that those are more like what I actually feel. Then I think in terms of what would be funniest and what some of my friends would characterize me is half-light, because I love getting into fights. I don't have the physical strength for it, but it's happening in my head, so that's where conceptualization comes in. I'm
I
ready for it at any moment.
I love that. Half Life. Not many people say that they're Half Life. I have to say, conceptualization hasn't been named before. Empathy gets a lot of love. Conceptualization's a funny choice. Like, as a skill, it is pretty hilarious, because I always feel like that's where the creators basically make fun of themselves most of the time, is through conceptualization. Like, a lot of the in jokes are there, right? like actual art degree, I think is when you complete it, is it -1 interfacing because your hands
It's like -1 perception maybe, and then or something like that. Yeah, because you're bad at
hand.
seeing reality.
Oh yeah,
Or
no, that's when you're processing it.
oh,
Um,
okay.
and
Yeah.
then when you complete it, I think it's -1 hand-eye coordination, and the line is hands shake at how shit it all is. I just it's
I
so
love.
good.
I actually in my first playthrough I got the actual art degree and it was so fucking funny. It was just like, man, they really got me. They
Yeah, yeah.
they got me bad.
A lot of people feel seen by that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very good. Uh, what's your favorite piece of music from the OST?
Um, very, very hard question, but I think the one that like just popped into my mind the fastest was Burn Baby Burn, and
Mm,
specifically the like piano tune that comes along with it.
hmm.
I just feel like it's the one that really represents the game best for me, which it doesn't come up often on the game, but I think that's what makes it stand out more. I really, really like that one.
Well, it's at a very poignant moment when it comes, and it's the boat trip to the island, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think just that imagery of Harry with the boombox and just like his partner Kim, and I love that just before he gets in the boat, I love the fact that Harry like this when Kim questions the presence of the boombox, like Harry's like almost as if he's like insulted his dog at suggesting that maybe they don't need a boombox, right? Like, well, what did you think I was going to play Sad FM on? You know, like, this is
Yeah, exactly.
as if like the idea of going over on this boat about playing Burn Baby Burn was a disgrace in Harry's mind. I do love that. It's a great
I also
moment.
love that boomboxes are very heavy. I don't know if you've ever tried to lift one up, but
Yeah.
you find them in vintage stores sometimes, and I'm like, oh my God, carrying that on your shoulder for the entire boat ride, like no wonder Kim was impressed by his bicep growth.
People used to do it on a skateboard and down the streets of California. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, no, good choice. Do you have a favorite line of dialogue in the game?
I could not find an answer to that one. My cop out answer is every time Kim lifts his eyebrow. That that really gets me. It's just like
I'll I'll let
I can't really
I'll let you have that.
do it.
Because I do love any time where there's stuff that you would only find in the book, right?
Mm,
And like the reading stuff where it characterizes people's actions within conversation. Um, the one I think of immediately when you mentioned Kim and his eyebrow is actually um, when you first meet Joyce and
mm.
he says something like detective, you know, he's a little bit strange, but he'll lead the thing. And it says it happens quicker than a shooting star. But did the lieutenant just wink at you? That's yeah, and I love
I
that
love that.
it's like only you see it. It's only for you, and um, us Disco
Yeah.
Elysium fans being what we are, we over sexualize that wink, and you know, think he's obviously flirting with us, which he is. I won't have anyone
Yes,
dispute.
I don't think we're overdoing anything. I think it's completely canon. One of my other favorite things is when Kim puts on a smile that only you can see or something
Mm,
like that. And I
yeah,
love to imagine what that actually looks like because usually he's so like, and so I'm like, how small is it? Is it just like a, or is it like a little bit? Yeah, I don't know. I love to imagine that moment.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, yeah.
yeah. I love all of that stuff. It's generally bracketed actions, right? They'll have like a little
Yeah, I
bracket in the
love
thing,
those.
or like obviously Dios mio is the best, where Joyce says she's a
Yeah.
liberal and is like, it's so good. Do you have a favorite moment in the game? Just a general, and you know, this could be a scene or some sort of thing that kind of blew you away at the time.
There's obviously so many. Um, One that I don't feel like I hear people talk a lot that really, really stuck with me is the moment where you are going to the working the working class woman's apartment to tell her that her husband is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the anxiety that Harry has about that moment. I love how if you try to do it without Kim, it usually goes disastrously because you need someone like him there just to give you moral support, even though he doesn't say anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I can remember. And I don't know, I just love how when you walk into the apartment, you're looking at all these objects in her house, and I guess depending on your skill sets, you can find out more details about what her life is like. Just random throwaway character, right? And yet suddenly you are one of the most important moments in her life just by being there, just by conveying that information to her.
Mm.
And she's obviously never going to forget that. And I don't know, it just felt so real and so grounded. And so, like, especially compared to all these other massive encounters that you're having outside of that,
Mm-hmm.
that felt the most like human to me. But yeah, I really like that scene.
No, it's a good choice. I have similar feelings on first of all the anxiety just before, and it's like I genuinely think that's probably one of the hardest things a human being has to do, whether it's a doctor, police officer. Like, can you imagine? Like, it takes it, you know, that takes some. I don't know how people do it, and they convey that so beautifully. Like, it really, because obviously this is the thing about role playing games, right? You don't even realize that you are as connected with a character as you are until something like that, and all of a sudden you're like, it's not Harry feeling this, it's me.
It's
And
me. Yeah.
yeah, and I like when he walks into the house. It's interesting you remark on the orbs and stuff. The first one that pops up is a yellow orb that says you should walk while you know explore the house, be respectful,
Mm.
because obviously
Yes.
you run everywhere, right? And just that orb, I was like, well, okay,
Yeah.
and I walked. I did not run at all. That's powerful, isn't it? Like,
It's so good. I'm getting goosebumps. Yeah, like
yeah, like
it's so beautiful.
all of a sudden, yeah, you are the person delivering that news, and I think it's really nice how you put it. Actually, that this, as you say, you're in one of the most important moments of your life, for just a moment, and there's a discussion afterwards with Kim, like, what now? And he just says nothing.
That's it.
That's your bit done.
Yeah.
She'll be okay. Yeah, it's a absolutely incredible piece of writing.
It's one of the also the uh, I mean, the whole game, if we wanted to be overly critical of it, could be seen as a piece of propaganda, right? Like we're humanizing these police officers in a
Mm,
way that uh, they're not really that nice in real life typically. And especially that scene to me really highlighted the difference. It also brought me out of the game a little bit when it was happening because I was really like, oh my God, in my interactions with police, they would never be this sensitive
mm,
to a piece of information like this. Like they would never go to such lengths. But I think in a way it also really works within the narrative because Harry's forgotten that he's a cop. So he's forgotten all the other times that maybe he's told people that someone has died. So in a way it's like his first time doing that sort of thing, right? He's not desensitized to it yet.
mm. Yeah.
Um so yeah, anyway.
No, it's a great point. Very good point. Yeah, equally, it's interesting. That's a very interesting way of looking at it, actually. And I hadn't considered just how much that I just accepted Harry and Kim as the best cops ever and representative of all cops. But actually, the Hardy Boys make it very clear that generally the RCM and even in Harry's case files, you can find out he was a complete arsehole. So yeah, no, it's very, very good point. Good observation. Um, this is an interesting one, and I often have to bail people out on this one, so I might have to remove it as a question, to be honest. But do you have any wild theories or one that you subscribe to about Disco Elysium?
Yeah, I think Disco Elysium 2 will start by Harry waking up next to Dora and it was all just a dream.
Ooh,
That's what it's gonna be.
wow.
I came up with this myself.
Okay.
Uh, it came to me in a dream. So now I'm conveying this holy scripture to all of you. That's what's gonna happen.
Holy Scripture is amazing. Yeah. Have you ever seen the one about? And this is close to about as close to canon as a wild theory can get, I think. But it kind of touches a little bit on what you're saying there about the failed electrical experiment, failed playback experiment. Sorry.
Maybe, but I probably forget. Tell me.
So when you speak to Trent Heidelstam, he would explain some of the tech that they were trying to develop at Feld, and one of them was a kind of video gamey video player that
Mm.
allowed you to kind of like, I don't know, you record stuff, events or whatever, and then you could go through it in the Feld playback device. You add to that the fact that everything is presented to you on Feld tape, and has a Feld UI, and then you add to that the fact that
Mm.
the people who would have that kind of equipment would be the big aerostatics in the sky controlled by the moral intern. There's also the fact that Harry could be what's known as a magpie and someone who is able to interact and shape pale. So he would have been one that was observed by the moral intern potentially as a danger to civilization. And then there's all the dreamlike facets to the game, which seem very odd, like Shivers and Inland Empire, all of this weird ability to foreshadow stuff to the point where, like, if you explore certain details, like the hanged man being happy in his death, and then you say it to Clashia, and then obviously it's revealed that they were having sex at the time. Even Kim's like, "How did you know that?" Like, and that removes the whole. Well, it's just in his head because he said these things out loud and he's had a response from another person. So I wonder if it's maybe something like a recording of Harry from the aerostatic or something like that. I don't know. It's a pretty wild and grand theory, but I like that there are that many things where you can go, well, actually, that connects to that, and that connects to that, and that connects to that. So it was all a
I love that.
yeah, it's all a
And I
simulation.
love theories like that because it doesn't make anything that you're doing less real or less important, to me at least, less impactful, because we're playing a game, right? So if the game turns out to be a game within a game,
Yeah.
that's still fine. Like it doesn't remove, whereas the it was all a dream cop out, I don't know, kind of ruins stories typically, for
Mm,
me at least. Because
yeah.
then it's like, oh well, none of that actually mattered because dreams are weird and don't mean anything. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I just love I love that there is a way to read Disco Elysium in that way,
Mm,
um, and not have it ruin the experience.
yeah. Agreed. Is there anything that you don't like about the game, or you would change?
Um, so when I played the game, I played it on the Switch, and I played it. It was the what's it called? The cut,
Oh, Jamais. Are
the
you on
one with
about the Jamais Vu update or the final cut? Is that what you mean?
it was the final cut, yeah, final cut, but it was before the more recent update where they fixed a bunch of efficiencies. So
Yeah.
when I played it, my game crashed every 2 to 3 hours, and then I wouldn't have saved, and so I had to replay a bunch of scenes, which was fine because it was still fun. But entering any room, I don't know if people know this, but on the Switch, if you just exited the Whirling in Rags or went to your room or whatever, it would take a full minute for it to load between
Wow.
screens.
Wow.
So I would fully be like exiting a room and then I'd go on my phone, scroll through Twitter for like a full minute, and then I'd go back to the game to play it. So it was pretty torturous. Um, and I'm so glad they did an update. So that would have been my answer. And when my partner played it, then it only took about like 10 seconds or something
Mm,
to switch between rooms. And I was like, yes, but it still crashes. It still crashes sometimes. So anyway, what I don't want about the game, make it a good Switch version. Make it
yes.
so it doesn't crash, please. Thanks. That's all I want. Don't change anything else. It's all good.
that's exactly why I haven't got it on Switch, because of that. I've got it on bloody
Yeah.
everything I could fit it on, to be honest. But yeah, I don't have it on Switch because I'm, as much as I would love to play that in my hands, and I don't have a squillion bucks to go and buy a Steam Deck on a whim either. So it's like I'd love a portable version, but obviously, yeah, it's beyond.
Um, and the other thing, and this is just like all games forever, please make it so you can increase the text size. Because I don't know how it is on PC, but at least on the Switch, it is so tiny, and I literally have to like hold it up like this. And I do have glasses; they help me read, thankfully. But on the TV, it's even worse because you can't like
Mhm.
physically go closer. So I don't know, just any Disco Elysium devs that are listening to this, or any devs in general, please make your text bigger, for God's sakes. We all want it.
Yes,
Thanks.
I would like to think in the world of accessibility that won't be a problem in the future. I know on PC you can increase it as much as you want, and you can have a dyslexic
Okay,
font and all sorts. So it's kind
cool.
of, yeah, that's a gap that needs to be addressed definitely. Um, are there any particular stories? I know we talked about your favorite moment, but I'd like to know: were there any stories within the game that resonated with you personally? Was anything where you kind of reflected and gone, "Wow, that's just like me"? If you say getting blind drunk where you forget everything, that doesn't.
I really, well, okay, this isn't, I guess Harry's whole vibe really resonated with me in terms of the skills and the way that you interact with your skills and thoughts. I mean, as a fellow ADHDer, maybe you can relate to this, but I feel like I am constantly battling a chorus, like a Greek chorus of 20 different voices in my head that are always telling me to do different things at different moments of time. And it's just a matter of which voice is louder at any particular moment. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have to like step in and manage them and be like, everybody shut up. I'm going to do this even though you're telling me not to, or even though you're telling you to do it. So it's I found that aspect of it so relatable, and I really wish that I could like name each one of them so that I would know, what their
Yeah,
faults are.
yeah.
Um, so that I'd know, like, oh, this is just drama being dramatic as usual, or something, or Half-Life trying to protect me or something, as opposed to what it is right now, which is a bunch of like blobs, unnamed creatures in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's
so
funny.
yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. Do you remember when? So when we were first talking on Twitter, I'd messaged you something like, "Sorry, sorry, I didn't forget about you," or something. I was really apologetic, and you're like, "Don't worry, I hadn't thought that." That is the worst thing, isn't it? About the whole like that. What skill is that? Because he can fuck off. Because whatever that is that makes me think that everything I say to people is a problem or is bothering. Like I'm getting
Um,
it. I'm getting in the way, or I've. Can you relate to that?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, totally. It's like your apologeticism or something, your
yeah.
self-esteem voice. I don't know what I would call it, but the sorry cop in you, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, totally. I think that yeah, like in different moments of life and of time, the various voices tend to get stronger and weaker, and I guess that guy really wants to come out of you
yeah, yeah,
for
yeah,
now.
yeah.
But you gotta strengthen one of the other ones to make him shut up.
Exactly. Yeah. Um. Okie dokie. A few more. We're nearly there. Home stretch now. Do you arrest Classier or not?
Absolutely not. She is too beautiful to do anything wrong.
You're compromised, I think, Stushi, I'm afraid.
No,
No, you,
no, no,
no,
no. Everything's correct, and she will love me, and we will be together, and
you see,
live happily ever after.
this is like when Kim tries to claim he's not compromised, and then Volition's like, oh yeah, no, he 100% is compromised. And he tries to be like, oh no, I'm not affected by the attraction of young women. Obviously, he's gay, and he thinks that that's his armor. But no,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
afraid not, Kim. You are.
Not plus, yeah. Except for me, though, I'm the exception.
Yeah, you're the exception.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of arresting her really. Just purely because, as crappy as some of her story is, she doesn't deserve to be sentenced for the things that you know her to be, to a death sentence. I think it's
I mean,
it's
even if she does deserve it, I'm like, I don't
yeah
I don't really care about all that. That's not what I'm here to do. I mean, I'm in the story I'm a cop, but in real life I'm not. And I'm not gonna do it. I
yeah
don't wanna.
yeah. Does Kuno care?
Kuno is, I don't know if you've seen this meme floating around, but he's the biggest fake I don't give a fucker around.
I haven't
Yeah,
seen
have
the
you seen
meme.
that?
No, I haven't. But
Fake idgaf. The
oh yeah,
anyway, it's
yeah, yeah,
like he Kuno cares too much. So he needs to be taught how to care a little less, I think, because he's lying, man. Kuno lieth too much.
yeah. It's interesting. Like the companionship he has with Kuno S, is actually, for me. I think the thing that gets missed there is that's driven by huge amounts of empathy. He knows what it's like to be a child kind of lost at sea, dealing with trauma, and like they don't realize it, the two of them, but they are joined in matrimony on that basis, right? You hear the story about Kuno S potentially, well, she was shivering in the corner, and then I think, I can't remember which skill it is, but it says it's murder hangover. Like you're well aware of that, and Kuno's obviously got his own trauma related to his dad, etc. So yeah, absolutely, he's the most empathetic cop in all the land, I think. So yeah,
I
it's
really like if there was a story that I would want to be told from any of the original cast there, I would really want to follow up on Kuno S and what happens to her
same.
after all of this. I feel like she's not that underdeveloped, but out of the cast that we have, she feels the most underdeveloped, and I really want to know more about her. And I really wish that one of the endings wasn't Kuno gets to be a cop and then Kuno S is just left alone, right? Like that really breaks my heart. Because I
Yeah,
feel like it feels like she's too broken for Harry to try and fix, but someone else can, like someone else can help her in a way that Harry can't. So
yeah,
yeah, I
she's
really
kind
want to see that.
yeah, she's kind of completely abandoned. And in the moment, so if Kuno does come with you to the island, when he says something like "partner the waves, shit" or something like that, and then I think Composure chimes in and says, "This is the voice of a man who knows he'll be looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life." So whatever kind of breakaway he had from Kuno S, obviously, but I think what it's trying to highlight is that he scared the shit out of him. She scared the shit out of him. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's a brilliant, brilliant story. Those two. Um, I guess we kind of answered the next. Oh, what copper type are you?
Superstar, obviously. Apocalypse, obviously. And then art, obviously. So
Nice,
um,
an amalgamation of three of the most insane copper types you can be. That's
exactly. The art one is funnily enough the most sane one out of the other
yeah,
two. So
it is, yeah, it is.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I love all of them too much. I can't choose. I want all three.
so this is an interesting little fact. I forgot to mention this actually at the start of the show. You may not know this, but you are mentioned on almost every single episode of the podcast so far. Because obviously,
Me?
yeah, ah,
Why?
because I obviously reference your No Truce With Capital video now and then. I think yeah, you basically, and I mentioned you to Paul Looney because you tweeted about how many big moments are in Disco Elysium. The reason I bring that up is because also Superstar Cop has been mentioned on every single episode. So I don't know what any of that means, but I had to get it in before the end of the show.
I think it means that the people that you are interviewing think
You're
way too highly of themselves and love to talk about themselves and want to be the superstar cop but are too embarrassed to actually admit it, so they hide it behind a veil of irony. That's what it all means.
you sound like Bo Burnham now, where he addresses all of his defense
Oh God.
mechanisms. You kind of already touched on where you'd like to see the game go next, and I actually think this game's kind of null and void now. That question's become null and void now because the question of where we end up next has been so changed by the events of the last few hours. But are you sticking with your "it was all a dream," or is there anything else where you'd kind of like to see explored in a sequel?
I mean, well, not doesn't change the fact that the world of Elysium feels so real and so rich and with so many other places to go. I think like the one place that I don't want it to go is like a direct sequel to the adventures of Kim and Harry. Like I
Mm,
actually am not really interested in anything that follows that. I'd obviously still play it, but if
yeah.
I had to choose, um, I would really love it if it went even to like a complete stranger on the other side of the island or someone who's up on the airships or whatever other scenario that we have. I really want to see something else within that world. That would be my preference, but I don't know how likely that is. We'll see.
No, I completely agree, and if it comes from Zame, let's imagine in a world, they maintain the IP and they eventually release a game in Elysium, I can well imagine that they would go with the exact opposite of there's so much faith I have in Zame these days. I think they would go with just keep it Harry and Kim. Like how Game of Thrones made characters like Sansa Stark and Tyrion Lannister, etc., survive and come through the most insane things because, like with a lot of TV shows, you get like an appeal nature going
Yeah,
on to these characters where you can't possibly, like, the ratings will fall if you kill them off, kind of thing. Um, and I worried that they'd be like, oh, we can't possibly do it without Harry because he's a marketable, recognizable thing. But yeah, I agree with you.
that's good. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Tyrion though, because in the books, he has the biggest fall from grace, and he has one of the most radical transformations of his character. And if they actually went that way with the show, the ratings would still drop even though he's alive because he becomes like an absolute monster. So that's
I,
that's a funny example.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree, and I encourage way more people to go and read the books, even though we're probably never going to see an ending to that. That's the literary version of Zhang collapsing and never seeing our dreams come to fruition. Final question, and again, this might be one I have to remove because everybody give me the same answer. Communism, liberalism, moralism, or fascism?
Well, I can only assume what everyone else has said, but I think by now you should know that I will go for fascism. Uh, Only if I get to be the benevolent dictator at the top of it all. And then I rule for about like 50 years, everything goes well, everyone loves me, and then after I die, I appoint a board of people to take over after me because I don't trust any one of them individually to take over me. But unfortunately, one of them is very power hungry, and so he wants to take power all for himself, and then he launches a genocide and create a whole new name for that process called Balkanization, and I am talking about Yugoslavia. I am Tito in this scenario. Thank you very much.
Wow. I thought, how on earth have you come up with that on the fly? And then you mentioned Yugoslavia, and then I remember you saying something online about your dad ranting about Yugoslavia. So I'm guessing there is a link there. So this is something you've given a lot of thought to.
I am from Kosovo, so that's
Ah,
something you can learn about me. I am from former Yugoslavia myself. I grew up there, and I moved to Canada as an adult. So my entire worldview is shaped by the Balkans.
wow.
I just have a lot of that in me.
So you're a closer relation to me and my European brothers and sisters, and I thought actually that's really cool. And I suspected you had some Canadian in you because of how you say about.
Really? It's that obvious?
Well,
Yeah.
I watched a lot of Trailer Park Boys, when I was in my 20s, and I've become very conditioned to hearing that now.
Yeah. It's pretty subtle because most people think that it's the about, but
Mm,
nobody says about. It's just a more subtle like about.
yeah, well, so funny thing, the region I'm from is like west of England, near Wales. And if I ever speak to people in the south of England, they often say that I say about like that. So
Hmm.
maybe that's also a subconscious thing that I'm picking up on. Anyway, that was the final question I had for you, Stushi. You have been an absolutely incredible guest. You've made me laugh multiple times. I don't think I've laughed that much actually doing a podcast at all. So you definitely, all of those, that amalgamation of copo types is 100% you. Even if it,
I'm winning.
yeah,
I'm winning the podcast game,
yeah,
right?
even if there
At
is
the
some
end.
half light in there, which I'm now scared of, it's fine. But no, that has been Stushi on Human Can Opener. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope we can speak again soon. And until the next one, to the audience and you, goodbye.
Thanks so much, David. This was really fun, and excited to see what happens on Tuesday.
Thank you, Stushi.